Sometimes, you wonder if he even sees you anymore. You show up, you give, you soften, you open. But something in him stays far away, like he's watching you through glass. There's love in his eyes, but also distance. You can feel it. You can feel everything. You're not asking for much. You're not asking him to fall at your feet or rewrite his life. You're just asking him to feel you, to meet you where you are, to show up not with grand gestures, but with presence. And you keep wondering, where did that protector go? The man who used to hold you with fierce certainty. The one who lit up when you walked into a room. The one who fought for your happiness without being asked. Where did he go? Let me tell you something no one ever told you clearly enough. He didn't stop caring, but something inside him shut down. And it wasn't your fault. It's never just about what's happening now. It's about what got buried in him long before he met you. The boy inside him who was taught to be strong but not soft. Who was praised for stoicism, not sensitivity. Who learned that being a protector meant control, not connection. But here's the paradox. He's starving for the very thing he's afraid of. Your softness, your surrender. Not the kind of surrender that silences you. Not the kind that shrinks. But the feminine energy that doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't fix, just exists so fully that it calls him back to himself. Because the right kind of feminine energy doesn't make a man weaker. It makes him remember who he is. This video isn't about tactics or rules. It's not about getting him back or getting him to act right. It's about something deeper than strategy. It's about the power you carry when you stop overgiving and start being. It's about what happens when your radiance stops chasing and starts shining. And what that awakens in a man who's ready to come home to himself. If something in you whispered, "This is for me," then it is. Subscribe if this is the kind of truth you've been craving. Like the video if you feel seen, and breathe with me as we begin. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to numb himself to you. It wasn't a choice. It was a reaction. Somewhere deep in his nervous system, there's a memory of pain. A time when showing up emotionally meant danger. A time when letting his guard down meant shame, or loss, or rejection. That memory may not have words, but it lives in his body. And when he feels your depth, your emotion, your intuitive knowing, it pulls something ancient to the surface. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your feminine energy sees him. And that's terrifying for a man who learned to stay hidden in plain sight. You can feel it, can't you? Those moments when you reach out emotionally and instead of leaning in, he pulls away, or goes cold, or shuts down, or gets defensive over things you didn't even realize would trigger him. And you're left feeling like your love is too much. But let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not too much. You are the mirror he's never had. When a woman is in her true feminine, not the wounded kind that begs or performs or pleases, but the calm, rooted kind, it shakes something awake in a man. Not his lust, not his ego, but his protector. Not the kind that plays the role of hero to prove something, but the protector that rises because her presence calls him into honor. There's something in your energy that can only exist when you stop chasing clarity and start living in trust. And trust doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean ignoring red flags. It means you stop scrambling to earn love that was never meant to be transactional. When a woman returns to herself truly, she radiates a frequency that no mask, no bravado, no confusion can withstand. It either awakens him, or it reveals that he was never available to begin with. And that's the part no one tells you. You don't have to make him rise. You just have to stop dimming yourself to accommodate his unhealed parts. You become the catalyst, not the fixer. You become the flame, not the fuel. And if he is a man with a protector buried inside, he will feel it. He will feel the call to rise. Not because you told him to. Not because you made a case for why he should. But because your energy no longer accommodates his collapse. You stopped trying to carry him. You started carrying yourself. And that is what awakens the ancient in him. The part that longs to lead, to provide, to guard, not out of duty, but devotion. Because here's the secret. When a woman returns to her own body, her own rhythm, her own knowing, it reminds a man of the safety he forgot existed. A man can only protect when he feels a reason to stand still long enough to feel. And your presence, your grounded, unbothered, magnetic presence, gives him that reason. But here's what most women miss. When you start radiating from this place, it's not all roses. It's not a straight line. Sometimes he'll resist. Sometimes he'll retreat even more. Sometimes he'll test it not to be cruel, but to see if this feeling of safety is real or just another illusion. And this is where most women revert. They think it's not working. They go back to over-explaining, over-functioning, over-analyzing, trying to earn back what their energy had already begun to shift. Don't. Stay with yourself. Stay with your softness. Not as a performance, but as a homecoming. That is what changes the dance. Because feminine energy doesn't beg for love. It reminds love where to return. And if he's a man with the heart of a protector, he will feel it. He might resist it at first. He might question it. But eventually, he'll realize he's been starving for that feeling his whole life. He just didn't know where to find it. And then, he saw it in you. He won't say it out loud, not at first, but you'll feel the shift. The way he looks at you a little longer before speaking. The way his voice softens when you're tired. The way his energy steadies when you're in the room, like your presence alone calms a storm he didn't even realize he was carrying. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. When a woman stops chasing peace outside herself and starts embodying it, a man either runs or remembers. And the ones who remember, they begin to rise without being asked. Because somewhere in his soul, he remembers a time when being a protector wasn't a burden. It was an honor. He remembers what it means to hold space without fixing, to guard without controlling, to love without conditions. And the catalyst wasn't pressure. It was presence. That doesn't mean you wait forever. It doesn't mean you endure disrespect, silence, or confusion. It means you lead with your energy, not your fear. Because fear makes us talk too much, explaining ourselves, defending our needs, justifying our worth. But your worth doesn't need an argument. It needs embodiment. And that begins the moment you stop needing his reaction to validate your energy. You don't need him to mirror it right away. You just need to own it. Because that ownership is magnetic. It doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't prove, it just is. And in that stillness, in that fullness, you become undeniable. You become the kind of woman who doesn't get chosen, she gets recognized. The kind of woman who doesn't perform intimacy, she invites it. But here's where it gets real. That energy, the one that awakens his protector, it only lives in you when you stop abandoning yourself. And that's the part many people skip. Because staying with yourself feels lonely at first. When you stop overgiving, when you stop emotionally caretaking, when you stop explaining why your needs matter, it can feel like silence, emptiness, even rejection. But what it actually is recalibration. It's you clearing the noise that was distracting you from your own power. Because every time you abandoned your truth to keep someone close, you were sending a message to your body, to your spirit, that their comfort mattered more than your truth. Not anymore. Now, your truth leads. And when it leads, it radiates. That's when things start shifting. Not always neatly, not always easily, but deeply. He may stumble. He may doubt. He may disappear temporarily or permanently. But the ones who are meant to walk with you, they will feel the change. Not because you said something different, but because you became something different. You became the woman who doesn't confuse love with sacrifice, who doesn't abandon herself to make others feel safe, who doesn't dim her light to protect fragile egos. You became the kind of woman whose presence activates a man's truth. And that is rare. That is sacred. That is unforgettable. Because deep down, every man longs to feel needed in a way that has nothing to do with money, status, or performance. He wants to feel needed in a way that touches his soul. In a way that says, your presence, your attention, your leadership, it matters here. Not because I'm incomplete without you, but because I trust what we can create when we both show up whole. That's the feminine energy that activates his inner protector. It doesn't beg him to change. It invites him to remember. And those who are ready will rise. You'll notice it in the smallest ways, not with declarations or promises, but with consistency. A hand reaching for yours without words. A message sent when he feels your energy shift. even if you didn't say a thing, an attentiveness that wasn't there before, not because he's trying harder, but because something real inside him is awake now. It's almost as if he finally sees you, not the version you tried to be, not the mask you wore to keep peace, but you. And here's the most powerful part. That shift didn't start with him. It started the moment you stopped performing love and started being love. Rooted, quiet, unmistakable. Because when a man is in the presence of true feminine energy, not chaotic, not demanding, not desperate, but sovereign, it does something to him. It softens his armor, not because she pushed, but because she stopped pushing. She stopped trying to convince him to care. She stopped explaining the storm inside her. She stopped hoping he'd finally notice how much she was hurting. And in that silence, in that surrender, a new language emerged. One that speaks without words, one that he feels before he understands. You became the invitation, not the instruction. And he rose, not for you, but with you. Because that's what protectors do when they're safe to feel again. But let's be honest, not every man has a protector in him. Some only know how to receive. Some only know how to take. Some will mistake your softness for weakness. Some will resent the mirror your light creates. And that's where your power will be tested. Because your softness isn't for everyone. Your emotional depth will be too much for those still hiding from themselves. Your radiant stillness will irritate the restless. Your self-respect will threaten the ones who relied on your self-abandonment. Don't shrink. Let your presence do the sorting. Let your groundedness be the boundary. Let your energy speak before your mouth ever needs to. You are not here to convince anyone to show up. You are not here to heal his wounds with your patience. You are not here to teach him how to love you. You are here to become the kind of woman whose very being reshapes the dynamic. You are here to embody the kind of love that doesn't negotiate with fear, that doesn't bend under pressure, that doesn't flinch when tested. And if he's the kind of man who's ready to come home to his own heart, he will feel it. In your silence, in your standards, in your softness that no longer carries. You are not hard to love. You just refuse to beg for it anymore. You are not too emotional. You just stopped censoring your truth for crumbs of connection. You are not too independent. You just realize that your wholeness is not a threat, it's a filter. And this is what awakens his inner protector. Not your need, not your pain, not your persistence, but your self-ownership. You stopped needing his validation. And that's what made your presence unforgettable. So now he has a choice. To meet you here, or to miss you entirely. And whatever choice he makes, you stay rooted. You don't collapse. You don't perform. You hold yourself, your worth, your radiance. Because when you do, the right man, the ready man, won't just love you. He'll protect what he feels in your presence, not out of obligation, but because he finally remembers who he is when he's near you. It will confuse him at first. This feeling that comes over him when you're near, it doesn't feel like the passion he's used to. It's not chaos. It's not thrill. It's peace. And for a man who's only ever known intensity as love, peace can feel threatening. He may look at you and feel safe and then, moments later, question that safety. Not because you did anything wrong, but because peace isn't what he's been trained to chase. He's been conditioned to respond to tension, to fix, to pursue what runs. So when you stop running, when you stop turning love into a prize to be won, he has to relearn what love even is. And that's the ache. Because he feels something with you he can't explain. A calm in his body, a slowing in his mind, a presence he didn't know he craved until it was there. And in that presence, his protector stirs, not as a reaction, not as a performance, but as a remembering. Because the true protector isn't loud. He's not flashy. He's focused, grounded, clear. He doesn't need to own her because her energy already chose him. Not through words, through trust. And trust is sacred. It's not given lightly. It's not rushed. But once it's there, it creates a kind of alchemy. A man with a protector's heart will feel it. And when he does, he won't just show up, he'll stay. Not because he's afraid to lose you, but because in your presence, he stops losing himself. And for a man who's spent years in emotional exile, years believing he had to shut down to survive, that is everything. You didn't need to heal him. You didn't need to lead him. You just needed to remember yourself. Because when the feminine returns to her body, her rhythm, her truth, she reclaims the power that was never gone, only hidden beneath the noise. And that power doesn't yell. It whispers. And that whisper says, I don't need you to protect me from life. I need you to protect this space between us where truth lives. Not everyone can hold that. Not every man is ready for that. But the one who is, he'll rise. Not to impress you, not to perform for you, but to honor what he feels when he's near you. And when that happens, everything changes. You stop feeling like you're chasing emotional scraps. You stop explaining your tears. You stop questioning your intuition. You stop asking, what am I doing wrong? Because you realize you were never broken. You were just dimming your power to survive someone else's inability to hold it. Not anymore. Now, you radiate. You trust the pull, not the performance. You choose presence over panic. And you wait not passively but powerfully for the one who doesn't just see your light, but guards it. Because he knows what it's worth. Because he's done losing what matters. Because in your presence, he became more himself than he's ever been. He remembers who he is when you stop trying to fix him. And he doesn't run from it this time. He returns to it. To you. There's a moment subtle, but unmistakable when he stops keeping score. Stops trying to prove. Stops resisting the part of him that wants to care deeply, openly, fiercely. That's when you know his protector is no longer dormant. He's not trying to dominate the space anymore. He's learning how to hold it, to make it safe for both of you, not by controlling what you feel, but by honoring it. And in that moment, something inside you softens too. Not the kind of soft that comes from exhaustion or surrendering your needs. The kind that comes from finally being met, finally being held emotionally, energetically, soulfully. This is the energy you've always known was possible. The kind that doesn't demand constant effort just to feel seen. The kind that doesn't leave you second-guessing your worth after every conversation. The kind that isn't earned but exchanged, mirrored, multiplied. Because now, you're no longer shrinking to be chosen. You are resting into being recognized. And that shift, it changes what you attract. You stop chasing potential and start magnetizing truth. You stop craving the highs and lows and start trusting the steady. And that's when the protector in him thrives. Not just the part that shields you from external threats, but the part that defends your emotional connection. That guards the intimacy you've built, not out of fear, but reverence. He begins to anticipate instead of react. He begins to ask instead of assume. He begins to show up fully because now it costs him too much not to. Not showing up for you would mean abandoning the most grounded, inspired, aligned version of himself. And once a man has tasted that part of himself, he can't go back. He might still stumble. He might still fall silent or distant in moments. Old patterns don't die all at once, but you'll see the difference. He comes back faster. He owns it. He repairs. Not out of guilt, but because being close to you matters. That's the difference between a man who's ready and a man who's just lonely. One rises, the other escapes. And now, you know which one you're calling in because you've stopped abandoning yourself to keep love alive. You know the quiet power of your feminine. You know it's not in how much you give, but in how much you hold. Hold your worth, your boundaries, your softness, your voice. That's what activates the protector in him. Not perfection, not patience, not pressure, but presence. And the more rooted you become, the more magnetic your world gets. Not because you've changed your shape to please someone, but because you've become unshakable in your truth. The woman who no longer fears being misunderstood. The woman who no longer doubts her sensitivity. The woman who no longer mistakes survival for love. You've come home to yourself. And now, everything around you either aligns with that or falls away. Let it, because the man who's meant to protect your heart, he'll feel it before he understands it. He'll be pulled toward it without knowing why. And when he does, when he chooses to stay, to rise, to lead alongside you, you'll know. Not because he says all the right words, but because his energy speaks the language your soul has been waiting to hear. You'll stop needing to ask, does he love me? Because you'll feel it in the space between words. in the steadiness of his energy, in the way his presence feels like a choice, not a performance. You'll feel it in how he listens not just to your words, but to your silences, how he remembers things you barely said, how he orients his actions not to impress you, but to honor you. Because when a man's inner protector is truly awake, love is not random. It's devoted. And here's what you may not realize. He didn't become this because you fixed him. He became this because your energy gave him permission to step into it. And in doing so, you freed yourself too. You stopped waiting for him to validate what you always knew, that you were worthy of tenderness, that your emotions were not burdens, that your softness was not a liability. It was the invitation back to truth. You stopped hoping he would choose you. You started choosing you, and that changed the entire rhythm of the relationship, because you weren't clinging anymore. You weren't controlling, explaining, proving. You were simply being. Still, radiant, unshakable. And that energy, it restructured everything. It doesn't mean you'll never be hurt. It doesn't mean every man will rise. But it means the ones who can't will fall away faster. Because your energy no longer sustains what's not aligned. That's the hidden gift. When you rise into your full, grounded, embodied feminine, the kind that doesn't collapse under the weight of loneliness or settle for breadcrumbs of effort, you start to draw in clarity. And clarity, that's power. You begin to trust the silence as much as the words. You stop fearing the space between connections because now that space is sacred. It's where you reconnect with your center. It's where you remember who the hell you are. And the man who's meant to meet you there, he will. He'll walk toward you not as a savior, not as a fixer, but as a man who knows his role is not to rescue you, but to stand beside you, steady, certain, awake, because that's what the inner protector does. He protects her peace. He honors her presence. He doesn't run when she feels deeply, he leans in. He doesn't fear her fullness, he welcomes it. And when you feel that, you'll know. All those nights you doubted yourself. All those moments you shrank your truth. All those days you carried the weight of the connection alone. They weren't for nothing. They brought you here. To yourself. To your power. To the kind of love that doesn't drain, but anchors. So if you've been wondering if it's possible, if it's real, if it's worth the work, let this be your sign. Yes. Yes, it is. It begins the moment you stop reaching outward and return inward, because that's where your feminine energy lives. That's where your softness becomes strength. That's where your stillness becomes sacred. That's where the protector in him feels the pull and chooses to rise. Thank you for listening. If this spoke to something deep inside you, if you felt seen, remembered, even held, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Share it with someone whose heart is ready to heal. And remember, you are not too much. You are just waiting for someone whose soul has been longing to meet everything you are.